As children grow older and are able to reason to solve problems, one way to develop those skills is with games to make the learning fun. Tic-Tac-Toe is a classic game, but drawing grids repeatedly for every new game can get tedious. The solution? A wooden game board with removable X's and O's. The players each drop their letter onto the grid until the game ends. Then, one picks up the board, flips it over to dump out the pieces, and they're ready to play a new game in seconds. All you need to build this game is some quarter-inch thick wood and a scroll saw. It's easy enough for even a beginner to make in a couple of hours, and I'll show you how to make it step by step. Last night before I quit for the night in the shop, I was looking through a huge stack of plans I have to see what I could make next. And I was looking for something relatively simple today because I've got so many projects already in process. But, when you've got time to kill while the glue's drying, things like that. And so I found this Tic-Tac-Toe game. It's on Steve Good's website, and should be fairly simple. All the parts are made of a quarter-inch material. I don't have any quarter-inch that wide, but I've got half-inch. I may see what it looks like in half, or if it doesn't look good in half-inch, then I'll plan it down to quarter. But this should be a easy project, and it should be a fun little gift to give to children at the right age. It doesn't take too long before you figure out how to win a tic-tac-toe every time. I planed some half-inch poplar and oak down to 1/4 inch thick because when I looked at what 3 half layers sandwiched together, it would have been too thick. However, I did sort of goof in prepping the material. The plan shows a dark upper and bottom layer and a lighter colored middle layer. I planed too much poplar and too little oak to use that scheme, but as I envisioned the finished game board, I thought that reversing the woods should work out fine. There are a number of methods for attaching patterns to wood, and I covered 9 of them in a video I'll link on the screen and in the description. My favorite method is scroll saw tape, and that's what I'm using here. It's a double-sided transparent tape. You roll it out onto the wood, then trim it to width using a utility knife. Then you flip the wood over, peel off the backing, and apply the pattern to the tape. The tape holds the pattern in place while you cut, but it peels off easily when you're done cutting, taking the pattern with it, and it doesn't leave any sticky residue. The oak had rough edges, so I ran it through my table saw to create a clean edge. I trimmed the first pattern with the scissors on 2 sides, and I aligned them at the end and side of the board since I knew they had been cross-cut at 90 degrees to each other. Before I started cutting, I installed a number 3 Pegasus modified geometry blade in my Pegasus scroll saw. These are reverse tooth blades, so they need to be mounted in a particular direction. The way I determine that is to take the blade in my right hand and run it gently across the thumb on my left hand. The blade will run smoothly in one direction but catch in the flesh in the other direction. That's the direction of the blade you want to face down, so the blade does most of the cutting in the downward direction. The cuts in the upstroke are to prevent tear out on the bottom of the workpiece. I base my blade size choice basically on 3 factors: the thickness of the wood, the hardness of the wood, and the complexity of the pattern. That's how I decided on the number 3 blade for this project. If you're new to scroll sawing and would like more information on this subject, I left a link to my video discussing this on the screen and in the description. I decided to cut the oak grid first. This is the most difficult part of the project because of the 9 inside cuts for the squares. It's not hard to cut, it just takes some skill to master cutting 90-degree inside corners. I drilled a pilot hole near the corner of each of the squares that need to be cut from this grid. I threaded the scroll saw blade through the pilot hole and tightened it in the upper blade holder. From the pilot hole, I cut to the nearest corner, backed the material up just a tiny bit so the blade wasn't cutting, and then I swiveled the workpiece until it was facing in the next direction I wanted to cut. I fed the workpiece into the blades to start cutting again, and I followed the line to the next corner. At the next corner, I followed the same procedure of stopping at the point in the corner, backing up slightly on the blade, pivoting the workpiece, and then starting to cut again. If you plan on doing much scroll sawing, this is a technique you'll need to learn and perfect. If at this point cutting a sharp 90-degree inside corner is beyond your capability by the method I just showed, I'll demonstrate another method. Cut to any place on an edge near the pilot hole, then follow the line until you approach a corner. Instead of cutting all the way to the point in the corner, you come near the corner and follow an imaginary curved line around the corner until you reach the line at 90 degrees to the one you were just cutting. Just make sure you stay in the waist area and don't go past any lines. Use the same procedure until you've made all 4 corners and come back to your starting place. The waist piece will either pop out or you can remove it yourself. Now you can go back and clean up each corner by cutting on the lines that are left. This will leave you with sharp corners. There are times when you may like the look of the rounded corners better than the squared ones. If so, don't go back and clean them up, just leave them. The opposite may also be true, and if it is, you should feel free to make the corners sharp rather than rounded. I always consider patterns to be just a starting place or suggestion that can be changed to fit my vision of what the final project should look like. After completing the cut for the last square, the piece looks like a window with 9 panes. Now all that remains for this part is to make the outside cuts that turn it into a square with rounded corners. I noticed that one side of the pattern was perfectly flush with the edge of the wood, but that the adjoining edge was a little off. This means that the pattern was placed a bit crooked, or perhaps the end of the board was not at a perfect 90 degrees. I trimmed that edge with the scroll saw, then went on to cut the other 3 edges. The top layer of the game was now complete. I started with the top letter T. I cut from the pilot hole to the nearest intersection, and then along that short line to a corner. I followed my normal procedure of cutting right to the point of the corner, backed off slightly on the pressure on the blade, and then pivoted the workpiece 90 degrees to the next direction I wanted to cut. Then I started cutting again and followed the same steps from corner to corner. The letter T is a series of 90-degree turns connected by straight lines. If you can stay within the lines and make sharp 90-degree corners, you have the skills to complete this game layer. It doesn't matter what order you cut the letters in, but I tend to be methodical and cut from left to right and top to bottom. I thought about it and decided you could leave out this layer entirely and the game would work just fine, but this layer adds some detail to show off your woodworking skills. The bottom layer is as easy to make as you can get. I trimmed the pattern right on the line on one side with scissors and applied that side to the finished edge of the board. For cutting, I only had to follow the line around 3 sides of the square. The corners are rounded, so there was no need to slow down and fuss with 90-degree corners. I pulled the scroll saw tape off the bottom layer in one piece and the pattern with it. This demonstrates one of the reasons I like this tape so much. Then I brought the other 2 layers over from the nearby countertop and held them together to show what the finished game would look like. There's just a bit of cutting left, the X's and the O's. I cut the X's from the oak and O's from poplar, but you could do it the other way. You could also make the letters from any other 1/4-inch thick hardwood you have on hand, or you could make both sets of letters from poplar and paint them to add a little color to the set. Use your imagination. The X's have rounded edges, making them easy to cut. To save cutting time, I drilled out the center of the O's with a 7/8 Forstner bit. If you don't have a 7/8 drill bit, you can drill a pilot hole in the center and cut that out with the scroll saw. You will need 5 X's and 5 O's. The X's and O's drop nicely into the 9 squares. After the game is completed, one player must pick up the board, flip it over, and dump out the pieces to be ready for the next game. Right now, we're prepared for the glue-up. There were a few loose fibers on the back of the middle layer, so I used a 1/4 sheet of 120 grit sandpaper to clean them up. Then I used a glue bottle with a tiny tip to apply a bead of glue to the back of the layer and a fingertip to spread it around. I flipped the piece over and placed it on the bottom layer. I used the sheet of sandpaper again to clean the inside edges of the panes on the top layer, and then I spread glue around the entire surface. Next, I grabbed some clamps from the storage rack behind me. I saw a tip on an easy way to make a storage rack for spring clamps. You purchase an inexpensive curtain rod, hang it up on the wall with a few small screws, and then you open the clamps, place them around the rod, and close the clamps. It only takes a second to open a clamp and remove it from the curtain rods when needed. I placed 1 clamp in each corner of the game board and 1 in the middle of each side. I like to use spring clamps when possible because they're so easy to use. F-clamps can cause the pieces to shift around when you tighten them, but that doesn't happen with spring clamps because they clamp straight down. I'll set this aside to dry, then give it a couple of coats of spray polyurethane. After the glue dried, I took the game board to my disc sander and touched up the sides. Then I moved to my finishing room to add a couple of coats of spray polyurethane. This is a beginner level project, with the most challenging step being to cut the letters in the middle layer. Since the letters are large, this is a perfect way to develop and practice your cutting skills. I would love to read and will respond to any comments on the project. If you enjoyed this video and my teaching style, subscribe to the channel. A like will help me grow the channel. Since I know you're in the mood for more woodworking, a link on the screen suggests 2 videos to watch next. I'll see you there.